Hey, I'm just doing a little update here to how my hostas are growing out here. These have been potted up into these pots for about 2 weeks. They're 18 to a tray pots. These came in liners, which are this size pots, 1.5 by inch by 2 1/4, I believe. And a number of them have already grown quite substantially. You can see how some of these are really well filled out even for these size pots, and that's happened really rapidly here for some of these. We've had really virtually ideal growing weather. It's cooling down a little bit now, but we've been like 80, 85 for quite a while here in Wisconsin, which is really just about perfect for hostas. In terms of light levels on these, that was something we've been talking about. Let me get a little more perspective on this. This direction towards the house is the south, and then towards my house, the greenhouse there, is looking towards the west. So then here we have the morning sun. A lot of it gets blocked by this tree right here that's in the driveway, right kind of just about above where these hostas are. They're just kind of outside the edge of it. And then actually this canna gives some shade for some of these in the heaviest part of the day. But then later in the day, they're open to basically a lot of midday sun. And then towards the end of the day, they do get blocked from my ash tree back there in the garage. So for hostas, they're getting a pretty good amount of sun. And you take a look at them, and you see, I've cut off some burnt leaves, but you see some that some leaves on there I've missed or that have burnt again since I last did it. But I'm getting really fabulous growth rates out of them. So that's the trade-off there, and they're in general growing really, really well for me. This mix that they're in, I'll just make a comment just about this real quick. This is a mix that I made up, and ideally I would have used a finer bark mulch. These are larger chips than what I really care for a soil mix. And I was afraid that it was going to end up staying too wet from the other finer components, mainly the peat moss in here. But it seems to be fine because these have, like I said, these are all growing. They've put on a lot of growth in the last 2 weeks. Basically this mix is about 5 parts bark mulch, the finest you can find, to 1 part peat moss, to 1 part of bark mulch, peat moss, and perlite. One part of the perlite, 1 part of the peat moss, and 5 parts of the bark mulch. And I added in some earthworm castings for micronutrients. I normally add in a controlled release fertilizer. I did this later in the year, so I put in some immediate release fertilizer. And because of the bark mulch, to help correct the pH, you put in some garden lime, which is like about a tablespoon per gallon, I believe, is what is right about what I use. And that's pretty much all I do. I mix this up thoroughly, make sure it's really well wetted, because both the bark mulch and the peat moss tend to be a little hydrophobic, and they will want to refuse that water initially. So you also don't really want to ever let these get very dry, because it can be hard to re-wet them. If you get dry spots down in your container, you may have to pull it apart and replant it before you're going to get a really soaked pit. Because sometimes even when you have it packed into a container, you'll just have whole cells that'll resist getting wet. So it's really important to make sure you have your mix wet, and also make sure that you don't let your containers dry out once stuff's planted in them. If it gets a little dry on the top, that's usually not a big deal. They'll usually just, you can hit that with the hose and they'll usually wet right back up. But also a mix like this, I do it for 2 reasons. Primarily, I make a mix like this to have something that's more structured, more airy than what I would get in a just a bag mix. So this gives easier place for the roots to go, and it provides structured soil versus just more of a heavier peat moss based soil that just packs down and pushes down the roots and doesn't make it nearly as easy for things to grow. Some of this stuff over here I was potting up in a hurry, and most of these are just a miracle grow with a little bit of bark mulch mixed in with them. So, and these were planted like almost a month prior to the other ones I just showed you, and they're looking fine. But you can see that they're, comparatively, they're not growing anywhere near as fast as the stuff in that mix is. So that's definitely doing these looser mixes. I'm absolutely convinced, overwhelming evidence here that they are far superior. The results you get are far superior. I don't have much to compare these to. These were larger plants that I potted up in about the last week and a half or so, and they're they're looking good. They're open out here in a lot of sun again, so some of them are getting some leaves to burn, but they're again in the same type of soil mix here. So anyway, hopefully that answers some of your questions about sun, shade tolerance, and soil mixes for various plants here. You can kind of juggle some of the light situations like this with Japanese maples. The same type of thing. You get them in a little too much light. You burn some more. Not enough. You slow the growth. I will say most of these hostas, with a few exceptions, are pretty forgiving and likely to be more forgiving than most Japanese maples are. So I usually wouldn't I wouldn't push if I was growing a whole bunch of high value Japanese maples, like some of these hostas are pretty valuable here. I wouldn't. I'd keep them in more shade, just to be safe. And since we were talking about Japanese maples, I think I showed this in another video, but so it's kind of a cloudy day today. But this is a Japanese maple I added up front here, just 3 to 4 weeks ago. This went in, and it was wrapped up in a horrible burlap bag that was shoved inside a pot and covered with this just hard clay that was packed down in there, and then it was all tied up with twine. The roots were tied up, and there were about half of them that were gone. And so I ended up having to bare root this before I planted it. And normally, if I got something that bad, if I didn't have a guarantee on it, I would have just taken it right back to the store. But and I don't like to bare root something like this in the dead heat of summer. But I did it, and so far it's held out. Those leaves are looking good. So how it comes back next spring will be the real test. Sorry, I should have gotten a little better leaf shot when I was up here. Let me walk over here one more time. So some of these leaves show a little bit of focus. Yeah, a little bit of damage on the edges, but I'm sorry, the camera sometimes it's just isn't like it's in the wrong light level or something. It just has trouble. You can see, there we go, we got a pretty good shot there. You can see it's pretty good with the leaves. They're not much burn. They're doing pretty well there. And as I back up, again, this is the east side. This is the front of my house. So we have, that is basically under the canopy of this birch tree here, just kind of right at the edge. And then we have the willow up here and the locust over here. So it gets some direct light in, but it's protected. It's still a pretty bright open space though. So that's the kind of light levels that it's getting.